Can you tell us how long you were in pre-pro and what kind of cameras you shot on, and like what was your approach from a filmmaking standpoint with this documentary?
No, I can't tell you that at all. It was just like it was chaos the whole time. I mean, it's like one of my partners on the project is a guy named Frank Martin, and Frank is a super accomplished, Emmy-winning, Sundance-winning documentary filmmaker, and he worked a lot at the very beginning on the stories, thinking about the stories, identifying the stories, researching the stories, talking to people, and so he is the one that shot many of those interviews, and they look great. We shot them just like kind of off the grounds of the Pentagon. Everybody showed up in their full dress uniforms. Everybody looked awesome. We got to interview kind of senior military leaders, the chief of chaplains of each branch. Like, it was really a pretty powerful thing. And so a lot of those kind of early logistics were handled by Frank, but because the movie, like most documentaries, kind of just kept taking these turns, like there was no pre-production. Yeah, we kind of prepped for the interviews and had to think about the questions, and it takes a few weeks and whatever. I mean, it takes a year and a few weeks. It depends on how you look at it, right?
And I know post-in documentaries are a bear.
Oh, they're brutal. I mean, a movie like this is ultimately made in the edit room, and honestly, I think part of the magic on this too came from the editors. The editor is named Holly Stocking.
Shout out to Holly.
Shout out to Holly. Her daughter is Hannah Stocking, who's one of the biggest Instagram influencers in the world. It's got like 25 or 30 million Instagram followers, and we cut half the movie.
Write that note down, Papa Bear.
It's great. No, we shot we cut much of the movie in Hannah's upstairs extra bedroom, and she tolerated us. But Holly was chosen very intentionally, because when I really decided, like, I'm going to take over this movie and direct it, the stories are real action-packed, lots of testosterone, some blood and guts, and very male-oriented, right? Yeah. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be kind of interesting to view some of these stories through a female lens? And maybe that would give us a different perspective. And so that was kind of one of the boxes that Holly checked. And the other is that Holly has never cut a long form film before. Wow. She's one of the most sought after film trailer editors in town, and has been for 25 years. And I thought, well, how do you tell a very complicated story in a short amount of time? Because that's what these little stories are. They're like little vignettes that we had intended to tell. And so I thought, well, who better to do that than a film trailer editor? They take a 2-hour movie and they cut it down into 3 minutes, right? So she checked that second box. And so much of this was like a stop and a start and a stop and a start. And then like Holly would get pulled into a trailer and she'd have to go like do that. And we'd pause for a couple of weeks and then we'd come back. And so it's unlike a scripted movie. Scripted movies are like supposed to be a well-oiled machine, right? Yeah. You prep for a certain amount of time, and that's pretty standardized. There's a very standard playbook. Everyone's different, but there's still kind of a standard playbook. Everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, and it's a very defined amount of time. You shoot, you've got a schedule. It's really boarded out. It's perfectly timed and scheduled and all that stuff. And post is usually a certain amount of time. Documentaries are completely different, man. And it's one of the great things about them, because you can take the time for the movie to find its voice in a way that you generally can't in a scripted movie. Right. And so we did that. And that's why it ended up taking 4 years, but it wasn't that normal, like, what cameras are we going to use and how long are we going to prep? And it's a very different beast.
So Rich, with your background in AI, do you also have a background in like software development at all? Because I'm going to make an analogy that I think this hits for me. So I'll just drop it. So what it sounds like to me is that your typical film, your non-documentary, right, your narrative film, has a waterfall approach, whereas a documentary uses an agile approach. And in agile, it's really like you have an idea of where you want to go. You don't necessarily have to have the finished product in mind, but you need to start. And you work with the people, right? You have developers who are doing the fingers on keyboards, but then you have the customer, the users that you're engaging with. And what you're doing is, and this is the interesting thing about Agile, is that you actually have what are called user stories, right? So you're developing these stories, and the stories help you to build components. So you build something and you're like, hey, does this look good? You're like, yeah, this is perfect. But now we got to do the next user story. The collection of those user stories is what you get in the end, but it doesn't have that same waterfall approach, which is I know what my beginning, my middle, and my end looks like. I know what my documentation looks like, your script, your schedule, your locations. Let it breathe. We know we're going to get there because we're engaging the people that are part of this ultimate story, but we have to collect those individual stories first and then put it all together at the end. So I was just thinking that has definitely a very agile development type approach for a documentary versus narrative, and others would be more of a waterfall approach.
Nick, I didn't realize we were going to be nerding out with the technology part of my life.